I just remember breaking down at one point. I just said, I feel so alone. I guess the Bible character that I feel like I'm most like right now and doing the politics thing is Joseph in the Bible. You know, whereas he was like in real prison in scripture, I was kind of like in an emotional prison for sure. My colleagues or whatever, they were more so kind of the women in the program were more the issue, I guess, in that one for sure. They would kind of, have a problem if I said something even remotely Christian, even if I was contextualizing it in terms of my experience. And the teachers would do a manipulative thing. They would say, like, well, that doesn't sit well with me, which is the therapist way of saying, like, I don't agree with your worldview in a postmodern way, but without actually saying it. You have to, like, kind of notice those subtleties, too, like, in manipulation, because if you're a therapist, you learn to pick up on it for sure.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my podcast. Today, I spoke to Ian Duley. Ian is a former therapist. He trained as a therapist, but he's left his profession and is running as a candidate for the governor of Tennessee. He shared his experiences in Syracuse University in 2014 and how he became aware of the woke ideology that has taken over the universities, and he sees now the necessity of stepping into more civic duty. And it was good to talk to him. He's someone who's vulnerably telling everybody what it's been like and what he's doing to try to set things right. And good for him as far as I'm concerned. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. Thank you. Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So how did you get experienced as a therapist, and how did that experience shape your understanding of the world and political views?
Well, for me, since my undergraduate degree, like I kind of wanted to be a therapist, like for a long time. And I think that's changed a little bit in recent years, given what's happened to me and Jordan as well, like with the re-education stuff that we'll talk about today. But I, man, it's a tough question to answer in a lot of ways. But I guess I can start off with this, like in terms of what I wanted to do, I guess, in terms of my Christian faith, in terms of like the therapeutic profession, I wanted to kind of like bridge the gap in a lot of ways, like from what I see from like, at least initially, like from the church. And then like, I think some of the missing connection, like connecting with like the younger generation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's some confusion, at least online, like especially around Jordan about how he's drawing so many young people to faith, like, and things like that. Like, and I think it's his postmodern, like non-confrontational approach that I think is in therapy. I think a lot of times, like in ministry, from what I've seen in the past, people tend to just kind of speak at people instead of sit with them in what's going on. And I think Jordan does a really good job of that. Like I definitely see that from a therapeutic perspective. There's just some things that sometimes I observe in him that I see in myself. Like he's definitely my spirit animal in a lot of ways. Like, but I wanted to like really like try to bridge that gap and try to sit with people instead of starting with just talking at them, I guess, in a lot of ways. And I think in ministry, I think some people kind of maybe need some ministers maybe need that kind of lesson a little bit these days to kind of start there and then kind of move on. But that's the initial answer of why I wanted to do it. But then, some things changed and I didn't go through re-education, but in Syracuse, New York in 2014, they basically were going to do it if I didn't leave. So.
And so you were in Syracuse, and what were you doing there exactly?
Okay. So I kind of have to go back about this too, because I kind of want to like set the stage here for the story and like the, basically like my undergraduate degree and things like that. So I went to a small like conservative Christian school named Harding University. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's out in middle of nowhere, Arkansas. I love it. It's great. I mean, the teachers there are amazing.
Oh, that's good.
So but it was a stark contrast from what happened at Syracuse. And like, it was and the whole thing is kind of like a divine intervention thing of how I even got there. So what I originally wanted to do is go to a school like close to home, right? Called
Mm-hmm.
Trevecca in Nashville. I ended up going there actually later, but at first I wanted to go there, but I ended up getting rejected. I was really nervous in the interview. I was really like, kind of neurotic in that way, kind of like, very just like, freaking out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up getting rejected. And so I was looking around for schools and just looking anywhere that would accept me. So there are two tests that you have to sorry, not have to take in America, but I don't know what it is in Canada, but you have to. There are two different options you can take, and I took the one that was less taken by people, like the test anyway. It was
Mm-hmm.
the Miller's Analogies test
And
over
is
the
this a
GRE.
over the GRE? Yeah, we have the
Over the GRE.
GRE. Yeah, we have
Okay,
a
yeah.
Canada GRE. Mm-hmm.
So I'm terrible at math, and so I wanted to do the Miller's Analogies test, and you kind of like analogous thinking and critical thinking is kind of more of my speed, more so than math. I did do okay in research, but it's not really my forte. But so I had called around to different schools, and I called around to Syracuse, their marriage and family therapy program, and I got a hold of the head of the department that day. And what was shocking about it is he said that if you would have gotten hold of anybody else today, he's like, we wouldn't have accepted you. But he's
Oh,
like, I like you, and he's like, just send me the results. I know you passed. He's like, just write me a half page and you're accepted. And I was like freaking out. I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I get to go and become a therapist. But little did I know there was Marxist subversion already taking place in 2014.
mm.
And what was shocking to me about all of this is that this was like really like 10 years. This is 10 years ago. This is a decade. I had to write stuff down even for today to remember that far back, because there was it was, how do I word this? It was hard to tell people around that time because nobody knew what was happening back then. It was hard to like just put into words what was happening, like, and what would happen, because there was let me think about this. Like, so there were just things that started happening. So like, I can get into the story if you want, like, because
Sure.
there's a lot there for sure. With like, because again, with the stark contrast with the university that I went to, a lot of these ideas were foreign to me. That they started talking about, like, they started talking about white privilege. They started talking about like the cisgender heteropatriarchy. I learned what microaggressions are, all those lovely terms they toss around,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. And what was weird about it too is they have this like, and I think Jordan has mentioned it before on his show too, like they have this, like, I call it narcissistic compassion or narcissistic empathy. It's like the teachers were very respectful when I was there, and I'm not going to like dox them or anything, like, but they were when I was there until you decide you're not going to play ball with them, and then like, and you if you
Then the
like,
knives come out.
yeah, and then that's what happened with me. And so,
Mm.
with Jordan, I can even kind of tell you maybe today later, like, what I think his re-education will look like, because I don't think they really, because I think it's based on identity Marxism, and I don't think they particularly care what his views are. I think it's more of just like, it's more of a, a power thing. It's just a control
Right.
thing, but because that's what it was with me. So like, so there were two main issues that I had with the university at first. So one issue that I had was like, with my Christian faith and things like that. There were two separate issues. One was the trans issue, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they were talking about in 2014, they were one of the first marriage and family therapy programs in the country to start giving people transition therapy, like, to get the hormones and to do
Mm-hmm.
transition, but. And so that was a shock to me at first. Like, I was kind of innocent in this way. I kind of thought they were talking about like hermaphrodite situation. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And they're like, no, we're talking about gender dysphoria. And I was like, that's different. Hold on now. Like, that was kind of nuts. And they were talking about, it was very politicized too. Like, they were talking about, this is before I even like wanted to get into politics or anything. I didn't particularly care about certain things, but they were very politicized. They were talking about going to the state legislature at the time and the current debate at the time was whether 6 or 7 year olds could transition. I'm like, the answer is neither.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
and they
Yeah.
were like, and I was like, this is just insane. And I remember specifically in class telling them one day, I'm like, they were so arrogant. They just thought they were going to go unopposed in this. And I was like, you don't have to worry about me. I said, there are parents out there who will fight against this. Like, I don't know what you guys think about like what will happen here, but this is insane. Like people will fight back on this for sure. Um, but it was hard to explain to people around me and stuff. It was hard to explain to them, like, this was coming and this was happening and it was going to be everywhere. And it kind of demoralized me in a lot of ways after I left.
And how long after 2014 did you leave?
I left a semester later for sure.
Okay, you really
So
did see
because
it, and it really changed everything for you.
yeah, for sure. And the other issue I had there was, and I've got some stuff written down here I would definitely want to get to in terms of like remembering the stuff because it's important to me for sure, and communicating to people that this is going to happen in other states too. I've already seen the Marxist subversion here in Tennessee, which is why I want to run for something. I actually met the lieutenant governor recently, some of the stuff I showed him probably shocked him for sure about what's happening here. Like just to give you an example, like there's a school that my cousin pulled his kid out of named Little River Montessori in Tennessee here, and they have a DEI statement on the actual front page of their school. So,
And these are for kids that are like 3 and 4 years old. These are for little kids, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a religious school too, which is the other shocking thing for sure. And so the subversion's happening in other places where I think a lot of conservatives don't understand that this is happening in the states. I think certain states they think are safer, and that may be true to a certain extent. Like it may not be as prevalent, but it's coming. And I think that we have to kind of warn people about this and kind of get on the education train now. Like kind of, and I would like to talk about it at some point too. My big platform that I want to run on is education reform for sure, because I think
good.
Yeah, so kind of like
We're
what
very
Jordan's doing. I
interested in
mean,
that.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I know Jordan's his Peterson Academy. It's great. But the other issue I had there was and this is what I think. Well, there were two things. One is there were like, and this is kind of how my situation kind of parallels Jordan's in a way with the re-education is my situation at the time was I wanted to refer like gay couples to like with the religious freedom aspect of like the First Amendment, and like be able to refer them to a therapist that would be more consistent with their worldview. And there was a lot of pushback on that for sure from them. And so there was that aspect of it. And then but we kind of shoved it to the side for a while because they were very confident they could change my views. Like they would bring up to me that there was a student that was a Christian that came in and now he's an atheist. They would use that as an example, I guess.
I see.
So they were pretty confident for sure. But then they would do weird things in classrooms too. So one thing they would do is, and we can talk about this if you want to too. I think because there was something I saw on your X account a few weeks ago, and I think I can speak to this from my experience. So, which is why like a lot of young women are voting for Kamala.
Yes, that's curious. I'm curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was the only guy in the program, and there were 29 other women in the program. I was the only guy. So the thing about therapy is it's definitely a woman dominated profession for sure, and with Jordan, I think we both have very similar personality types in that way that kind of, as men, kind of make us, like, especially on the big five, like more open to counseling. Like I think he seems to be pretty high in openness, things like that.
And compassion. Yeah.
Yeah. A very agreeable person, like, as well. I think, I think you guys kind of balance each other out in a way. I feel like a little bit,
Yes. That's
so
for sure.
Because my read on you is like you kind of got like you're really sweet, but I feel like you got a little bit of tiger mom in you a little bit,
Yeah,
you'll go after somebody if they come after your kids, like I kind of get those vibes. And I like it. You're like super tough. It's awesome. So I think a lot of women are like under this Marxist magic spell, and so like and I know Jordan's talked about this before. So one thing I think that kind of makes them in this context more susceptible to the Marxism is that, like, I know he's talked about them being higher, like in general, higher in agreeableness and negative emotion, right? So, and what will happen in that context is like, and what happened for, like in my program is they would get these women to talk about their trauma, then they would use that trauma against them to kind of build them up in a Marxist way. So it was a way to demoralize them and like and use the oppressor versus like oppressed dynamic, because there is a physical reality that I think men and women have to reconcile, especially women in particular, that with men, and I think you see this play out in culture, where there's a physical reality to the strength differences of men and women on average,
Absolutely.
and so I think there's a lot of women that have a hard time with that, and then so what the Marxists will do is they will take advantage of that. Like, I'm trying to figure out what I wrote down here. Like, let's see, like, yeah, and the messaging it teaches them, you don't need men. You see women say that now, like, we don't need men, we don't,
Right.
all of these things, and then you blur the lines between the gender differences and say like men can become women and women can become men, and so there's a obfuscation there, and it kind of muddies the water, so to speak, to get them more amenable to like ideas like communism and things like that, because this is.
So if they've been traumatized, then they are the victim, and
Mhm.
and then they identify the oppressor, and the oppressor is usually not a woman, is a man.
Right, and then they naturally want to go to a place where they don't want that. They either want to avoid being triggered, or avoid the trauma, or they want to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And that's where Marxism comes in and tells them a lie and says you can have that with us, but it
Yeah.
really leads to a destructive place for sure. And I
It's a
think that's
yeah.
where.
It's a dividing. It's a narrative that divides people. So
Right,
they go into their camp to be safe from their oppressors.
right. But the reality is they have to interact with the other side in life and other areas, and then that's where the
Yes.
problems start happening for sure.
Well, that's the challenge of life, isn't it? To have a
Hmm.
relationship with someone that you disagree with, and to find
Right,
common ground there. That's how you become more mature. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So yeah, I was just thinking about that. Yeah, and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. Yeah, it's just because there's going to be dire consequences for us in the future. Because the nefarious thing is that they're aligning themselves with men that'll invade their spaces, and then there's going to be problems there eventually.
Yes, because
They
the
will
men
suffer
who go
trauma.
into those spaces, what do you think of those men that go into those communist spaces that are those feminist communist spaces?
Probably not there with good intentions, is what I would say.
I wouldn't think so,
For sure.
right? I wouldn't think so.
Yeah,
And
and even if.
maybe it's a cause of not being successful in the male spaces that they're there.
Yeah, yeah, your guess is as good as mine on that. I'm not exactly sure on that point, but yeah, like, and so, but yeah, there were other things they did throughout the semester too that were really weird. Like, so one is they would do a postmodern thing where they would, like, one of the guy who actually accepted me, he would go. They went around the room one day and asked these women what the definition of a word was to them, like a very like subjective way of defining a word, and then like so a lot of them just broke down and started crying about their trauma and things like that. And then he got to me and I was like, I'll give you the word, like I'll give you the definition, but I'm like, I don't, words have like objective meanings. I think it's like some of that weird Marxist, like redefining word things. Like, it
Hmm.
was weird, like just stuff like that. They would, at one point in the semester, after the turning point, which I'll get to in a minute, they on two different occasions, they sent me emails and of like New York Times articles and other propaganda. I don't know what it was about. I'd respond to the email and say, okay, what do you want me to learn from this? And they wouldn't respond back. It's really weird. Just
Hmm.
stuff like that, like just weird, very odd things. So,
They're not very good at conversations. You know,
sorry. Oh yeah.
they don't have a conversation, right? They don't engage in uh, the spirit of negotiation with people to find an answer or to find a better way or anything. It's all opinions.
Right.
So
Well,
maybe
and
that's why you didn't get a response, because it was just an opinion that they sent you.
right. It's well, and what's weird about it with them too is they have this like kind of along those lines. Like they have this like very like let me educate you attitude. There's definitely that narcissism up there that, yeah, and it's really odd, like where like it's like we're talking to you, but it's like they kind of feign like having a conversation. Like it's like it's kind of odd. It's like it's a weird dynamic. It's hard to explain, but when you see it, you kind of know. Especially in academia, it's.
Have
It's
you
it's
have you
very
read about the animus, the anima, and the animus?
mm-mm.
That's from Jordan's readings in Carl Jung,
Hmm.
and
I know Young is a big influence for him for sure.
yeah, and so women who are there, they become animus possessed or anima possessed. I can't remember which is which, but it's when they feel that they are the most knowledgeable person in the room,
Hmm.
without a doubt, as far as they're concerned, right? Without a doubt, and
Like a Dunning Kruger kind of thing.
there's no way to talk to them because they are so on top of everything that there's nothing you can do to make any inroads. It's not even worth having a conversation when women take on that. It's almost like a personality that they take
Hmm.
on. Hey, it's very
Yeah, it's
strange.
yeah for sure. And so, but then we got to a point in the semester where everything kind of changed, and this is where this is where it started to get really weird. So, I think because I was talking to one of the girls in the program with me, and I asked her like at one point, I was like, "Why are they so confident?" I'm like, "There's something there, and I can't quite figure it out. Why are they so confident?" She's like, "Oh, it's probably," and she dropped this. I don't know if she was supposed to, but she said, "Oh, well, it's probably because of the documentary they're going to have you watch second semester." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Please tell me about this." And she did, and it was this anti-fundamentalist Christian documentary called "For the Bible Tells Me So."
Uh-huh.
And so it kind of portrayed all Christians as one way. It was very I would say misrepresentative of things. And so what I did was I took a colleague of mine, his name's Michael. I know he's going to watch this at some point. And we sat down together and we watched together and we analyzed it. And then I told them I watched it. And then at that point they were ready to re-educate me. At that point, that was when they I think decided that he's guilty of wrong thing and we have to re-educate him. So and after that, I got really stressed, gained a lot of weight. Like it was definitely, I've lost
Mm-hmm.
weight since then. I still need to lose more weight, but it's,
Oh, that's too bad.
yeah, I gained a
No,
little bit, but
really, that's too bad. Well, it's a terrible trauma. Even what George went through at the
yeah,
university, uh, it was 2016,
hmm
17. It was very, like, long time ago now. That's 7 years ago. And I think he's still traumatized.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know,
Mm-hmm.
I can definitely see it in him for sure. I think he's definitely like, I definitely, sense I don't know what you would call it. And Jordan sometimes where just a conflict within him. I see it, I just kind of, I get that though, because I was there, like, and he actually helped me in a roundabout way, like I mean, through his experience, like and you guys as well, you and Michaela as well, like helped me get out of that. Like I think Christ put you in my life for that, and I do want to get to that too because I think that's kind of the hopeful message in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But there was, but after that, they wanted so going back, what they did was is they were pretty, you know, keen on re-educate me. So what, and this is what I imagine it'll look like for Jordan. So they what would they so what did they do? So they were going to have me read like like Marxist LGBTQ literature. That was the first thing. The other thing they said they would do is force me to go to gay pride parades and just
Oh,
engage
yeah.
in that in some way. I don't know what that was.
Uh-huh. That'll change your mind. Yeah.
Right. And I told him like I think my response was like, I'll go to that if you go to church with me or something. I think that was my response to that. Like
Right.
just
Right.
like you know and and then I had some conservative friends who were looking out for me at the time. I think they were well intentioned, but ultimately decided to leave. And it wasn't running away. I want to be very clear about that. Like there was a reason, and I'll get to that. But um, when I when they decided to like re-educate me, like a conservative, and the teachers don't know about this, and they're pretty like hyper vigilant. I'll imagine they'll find this now. As long as they don't lie, I won't have a problem with them. But they did try to re-educate me, and I hope they don't lie about it. But they at let me think about this. They trying to think about this. Sorry,
That's okay.
with oh yeah, okay. So the conservative so the group contacted me, Alliance Defending Freedom. It's some law group.
Mm-hmm.
So and they wanted to sue the school actually because of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So and that was new. That was new to me. That overwhelmed me a lot because I'm just a student. I want to get my degree and get out of here. All these teachers are kind of coming down on me towards the end of the semester. At first, they were dragging me to their offices. By the end of the semester, I was going to their offices to talk to them in terms of, you know, their views and things like that. But it was and they walked me through that process. And something I think I learned from it is I don't think that lawsuits are a lot more complicated, I think, than people think. They walked me through the process, and it would have been about 2 years. I wouldn't have been enrolled.
At least, probably. At
Yeah, at
least, right?
least, yeah, right, at least. And I'm not exactly sure. And then that would have been that it would have been that process, and it would have been like kind of hectic and crazy. So then you have to worry about retaliation from them and things like that. Even if
And
even
so
if we do
were
win,
these professors or students that were
uh,
causing
pr-
trouble?
professors, the
Professors,
entire
huh? What about the
yeah,
students? Because you said all the students were women, right?
yeah. So the women were kind of, I don't want to say oblivious, but they didn't really seem to care that much about what was going on, I think. Now, what was weird is when I went to Trevecca, the second school, the women were the ones causing me problems, and the teachers were less of a problem. So it was interesting. The dynamic kind of shifted.
Okay, so you tried to continue your education at a different university.
Yes, I did graduate. I ended up getting my degree, and I ended up being a
Oh,
therapist for a little while.
uh-huh.
So, but saw a few clients here and there, things like that. But it was a, but so, but I decided at the end of the day, like, and this is where the spiritual part of this comes in, where I didn't understand fully what was going on, but I thought about it, and I was like, well, I was like, this is the first time they've been exposed to this idea. They have Christians built up in their head completely wrong. Like this is the first time they've been exposed to this kind of this difference where someone's just not going to budge for them. They were in an echo chamber, an ideological echo chamber, and so for me, I was like, okay, what should I do? I was praying about it. Like, I was struggling with my faith a little bit because they're doing this stuff to children. I was very just like disturbed by that, like that this is happening, and like it's kind of like seeing a car crash before it happens or something. I don't know. Like it's like I knew it was going to happen. I try to tell people what would happen, and no one would believe me because it's like it's so ridiculous to believe that it would be true that there would be like
Yeah,
transitioning children, and that especially like even within the psychological field, I think it calls the whole field into question with
it does.
in terms
Yeah.
of diagnosis and things like that. Like so, one thing that my friend pointed out to me that I think is a really good point with this is that ideologically the or not ideologically symptom wise, I guess the disorder or gender dysphoria really lines up with cognitively to some extent. It lines up with which disorder is it? Body dysmorphic disorder to a certain extent. And
Mm.
with body dysmorphic disorder, it's like maybe someone's obsessed over their nose or some other body part, and they go get that changed, right?
Hmm.
And so and so then you have, and then you have that kind of obsession with changing certain aspects of your body as well, and the other. But see, the one is traditional psychotherapy is the treatment, and then with this one, it's transitioning. And it's like, why is that? It's because it's political, and they don't really
Because it's
care about
become political. It's been
Mhm.
politicized.
Right, and it's the only disorder that I know of that you affirm someone's delusion. Like you don't do that in other disorders. Like it's very interesting for sure in terms of what they've done with it. But
And so, why do you think it's happened so egregiously in psychology? So, it's psychologists really who have been affirming these ideas. Why do you
well,
think?
oh, go
I
ahead.
mean, no, you go ahead. You tell me what you think.
Well, I mean, the easy answer is I think it's a soft science in a lot of ways. Like we're kind of a soft science in certain ways. Like I would say that because it's woman dominated right now, it's easier to co-opt by Marxists. It's easier to take like it's easier to redefine words. It's easier to take words that it's easier to like, um, yeah, stuff like that. Like redefine words. It's easier to like obfuscate and blur lines in certain things because again, there's definitely a social aspect to some of the disorders and things like that that get taken out for various reasons that aren't even really scientific. That would be my answer, and so it's
That would be
but it's
postmodern thought. That would be how postmodernism and Marxism come together, right?
right.
Hmm.
I would say yeah, postmodern and rejection of abject truth, right, um, would be a part of that for sure. And then like and so yeah, and it's just and what I really want people to understand who are watching this, like like we're in huge trouble if people like me and Jordan, like with reasonable, I'd say, opinions, like one is referring clients, but even Jordan's was more reasonable at the time. So if people remember, his original argument, from my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong on this, was that like even with the pronoun thing, when he got rushed by those students, which is the first video I saw of him, was that he wouldn't use the. It's not even that he wouldn't use the pronouns; it was just he wouldn't do it under compulsion or threats.
Yes, exactly.
And
Compelled
so it's like,
speech. It
and
was the
that's the
first time.
reasonable.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
even that should be. You would think that would be even reasonable by their standards, but it isn't. That's terrifying. Like, and I
yeah.
think once I saw that video, my days in the field were numbered. After
Right.
seeing that, like for sure, and it was. But we got to but yeah, so we got into the semester. I guess sorry, I know I'm jumping around all over the place. I apologize, but
Oh, that's all right.
we got to the end of the semester, and I decided to yeah. So I ended up leaving, and I kind of felt this voice, like it was very distinct, kind of like the Holy Spirit. I feel like, and it was like just said, "Not now," was the word I heard about,
Mm.
and little did I know, I think that like it makes a whole lot of sense now when because I think I would call it like I got a practical revelation in terms of like what happened afterwards, like even though I felt alone in that moment, like Christ was still working like in other people and kind of waking people up, even though I felt alone for sure. So like I
Can you hear
yeah.
that? Okay. Just give me a minute, okay?
Oh
Just give me a
sure,
minute.
sure, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Oh, you're fine. Let me well, I don't have a pen, but let's see, I can use my phone. Let's see. Yeah, is it going okay so far? Like I don't sound all terrible. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, am I talking too fast? Okay. Okay, cool. Okay, cool. Talking about. Okay, it's not okay because I was gonna say it's not me. I mean, I have an air conditioner in this hotel room, so I get one. So
Okay, that's better. Okay, there was music playing somewhere in the house. Someone turned
oh,
it
you're
on. I don't know who. Anyway, it's
fine.
off now.
Okay.
Oh, I see. So we were talking about um we were really talking about the spiritual aspect of
Hmm.
what you went through. So maybe we could review that. Yeah?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
All right. So like yeah, so we were talking about like the spiritual aspect of this. So for me, like I guess the Bible character that I feel like I'm most like right now and doing the politics thing is Joseph in the Bible. Like you know, whereas he was like in real prison in scripture, like the Old Testament Joseph. And I was kind of like in an emotional prison for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like during during the 2 years afterwards and in my class, so it kind of manifested itself actually a few months before Jordan's incident in 2016, because I believe it was in 2016, right, where
Yeah,
he
I
had
think
those
yeah, in the
students kind of
fall,
rushed him.
right? Mm-hmm.
Right, I think so. Yeah, I don't remember the exact date, but and also like James Lindsay's a huge influence on me too, and he won't answer his DMs though. I need to like I need him to respond to me, but uh, when so like it kind of manifests itself. There was a teacher. His name was Dr. Stride at Trevecca when I ended up transferring over there, right? And there was still some Marxism there. Like there were two women teachers in particular who were Marxist. Um, they were one was the multicultural teacher, so and then one was I don't remember the other one, but they were doing stuff like that over there, and the women were more so the my colleagues or whatever they were more so kind of the women in the program were more the issue, I guess, in that one for sure. They would kind of, have a problem if I said something even remotely Christian, even if I was contextualizing it in terms of my experience, because that's the other weird thing is like if the whole my truth thing, right? It's like that was the thing in Syracuse. So they would be like, well, this is my truth. And I'm like, okay, well, this is my truth. Is that okay? And they're like, no, that's not okay. And I'm like, okay, then I'm like, something's not adding up here. And the teachers would do a manipulative thing. They would say like, well, that doesn't sit well with me, which is the therapist way of saying like, I don't agree with your worldview in a postmodern way, but without actually saying it.
Yeah.
Like they would do stuff like that. You have to like kind of notice those subtleties too, like in manipulation. Cause if you're a therapist, you learn to pick up on it for sure. Like, but I was in Dr. Stride's class, and I just remember I had no sleep the night before, and like I just remember breaking down at one point. I just said, I feel so alone.
That's too bad. What a mess. What a bloody mess we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. It's traumatizing. We're traumatizing people everywhere. Children, men, women are being traumatized. Everybody. It's crazy. Well, it's crazy when you leave when you leave God. What comes up is multiplicity, which you saw.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Sorry about that. I didn't expect this.
Hey, I've been crying. I've been crying for the last 2 podcasts I've done because my sister is like about 2 weeks from dying. So I've been crying, and I just went to see her. So my heart is open, So don't worry
Yeah.
about crying. I've been crying. So I understand that.
I'll definitely keep her in my prayers for
Jordan
sure.
cries. Jordan cries.
Yeah,
I
I know he does
cry.
a lot. Yeah, that's
You're
I
crying.
get
We're
that.
crying. That's
Yeah, I
what's.
get that. I get
And
that from him for sure. I
we might
definitely
as well
relate.
cry for Western civilization.
Yeah, because I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, for sure.
It
I don't
looks
want to tell
that
my
way.
predictions. I don't want to tell my predictions on the election, but I'm not so sure on it. But even though I'm going to do my part this time.
Yeah, good for you.
But yeah, and then so like moving forward, like Jordan's experience, like I saw it a little bit differently. I think than a lot of people. Like I think a lot of the stuff he was talking about, at least initially, like was stuff that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Like it was stuff where I'm like, this is what I expected when I went to a master's program. I expected like his kind of normalcy, like and it's not what I got.
No.
And as a therapist too, like as someone in the same profession, like I definitely saw him, I guess, in a different light. Like there were certain things like I understood on his level. I think on certain aspects, in terms of his conceptualization of things, like I was definitely trying to like bridge the gap between Christianity and like um the psychological field. It was just it just really stood out to me in a lot of ways. Like and there was and just like and I think Christ used and this is something like eventually like I'd love to tell him in person, but like because I see it in him too. I really do. So I think he's struggling. Like
I do my best.
yeah, and got a big prayer book a mile long over here that I use, but man, it's I let me think about this for a second. Uh, like I think like there's a message that he gave to people, like especially young men, that
Yes.
is more important than like any lecture he'll give, any like class he'll teach, or any school he'll start. And like I think it's the same message that Jesus is telling him. Like I really believe this, and it's like because I feel very different than the way I used to a few years ago. Like it's completely different for me. And it's 4 simple words, and it's you are not alone.
Right.
And I
Right.
think
Right.
that's what. And I think we're still working on him. I
No,
think
I saw
he's not there.
that. I did. I saw that, because I traveled with him and I saw
Mhm.
all the young men come up to him and they were all so, um, they were respectful. They were respectful and they were careful. Careful. They didn't want to interrupt him, but all they wanted to say was, thank you. Thank you for paying attention and giving us your time so that we can feel that what we do is important because men are important. And this whole, feminism has really taken a dark turn. It's taken a dark turn, and it's taken all our young women with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't, and that's partly why I have a podcast, is because I didn't pay any attention to feminism when I was a young woman. I knew it was bad, and so I kind of didn't. I went and studied sciences. But since then, I've learned some, and I know that it was a movement of resentment. I mean, who had the time to talk about feminism when women were at home taking care of children and their husbands and taking care of the house and their communities? Those were busy women. The only
right.
women that had time to talk about it weren't doing what they ought to be doing. And so those are the people who are now running our universities.
Right, and it's happening at a lot more universities as well. I mean, I reached
Yeah,
out to a
now.
local representative, and I was talking to him about this, and I guess he may be he doubts a little bit where it's happening. I'm like, man, it's happening more places than you know. You got to keep a very
So
very
now
close eye on
let's
universities.
talk about that now. So you left therapy and
Mm.
you decided to run for governor of
Yeah,
Tennessee. And
that's what I'm trying anyway.
when is
It's
that election? Ah, good for you. When is
so
that election?
so so 2026 is the election for sure.
Okay, so you got some time. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I need to talk to as many people as possible. I don't have, like you need a lot of money too, and that's the one thing I don't have politics wise. I don't have a lot of, but so I have to figure that process out as well. But got to get my name out there first. But I think
What are you
like
seeing out there? Because you must be starting to talk to your constituents.
yeah, I was talking yeah, I was talking to and well, I want to address this too because I think some people are I've gotten this pushback a lot too, like why governor, why other things, and so there's a few reasons. So one, I think we're running out of time, but in terms of to get the education part fixed, because that has to be fixed now. I think because we've already got a like my generation is incredibly Marxist. It will only get worse unless we can take these universities back. But we also don't want to overcorrect. Like I watched Logan Lansing's video with Jordan at one point, and I like DeSantis a lot. Actually, I watched a lot of Jordan's videos, like his interviews and things like that. I actually came out liking DeSantis more than Vivek actually after watching both those interviews, which I didn't think would happen
Well,
initially. But
he's a very stand-up person. He's he's got his values in the right place. He's got them in the right order, Yeah.
oh yeah, and so with but I want to be careful not to overcorrect in the universities either. And I like DeSantis's idea and in terms of what he did in Florida. But I have an idea that I think will work, like in terms of the universities, because and I like what and Jordan's doing his own thing too, which I think is awesome. Like the Peterson Academy thing is a great like is a great start as well. But we have to I think at the state level do something as well, and then at a national level. So what my idea is this is again is to institute anti-communist anti-communist education reform. So the idea is that at a high school level and a college level, we have I don't know if you have this in Canada, but like in America, we have like prerequisites we have to take, like classes that are like mandating you have to take them. So what I would want to do is either the idea anyway is to work with someone like James Lindsay or and other people that I've seen on Twitter who have either lived through this and things like that, and make an education curriculum that teaches the horrors of communism, like the consequences of communism, the ideology, and um, yeah, and just a proper historical understanding of it. Because I think we've gotten a decent amount, at least in America, we've got a decent amount of like anti-fascist education right now. But anti-communist stuff is pretty lacking. Like I never learned about Mao Zedong in high school. I never learned about any of these things, and it seems to be from people that I've asked, it seems to be their experience too. And so doing that at a high school level and then at a college level to reinforce it without because see the part I want to be really careful about is like touching the coursework and telling and using the government to tell people what they can and can't learn, like using the government in that way, like telling people what they
Right,
can and
right.
can't learn. Even though I think the courses are pretty much useless and they end up going into journalism or something else, like gender studies, for example. Like a lot of gender studies graduates probably go into journalism or something else where they can spread Marxist propaganda. They don't actually utilize that degree. It's either from my understanding of it, it's just they either continue the grift and become a teacher, or they go into something unrelated. And that's kind of how they propagandize people, at least from my understanding. But that's at least a big platform I want to run on is that, I guess. There are some uh, other things. I mean, obviously, I mean, if you got any questions in terms of what, like any policy things, like I'm pretty much an open book in terms of that. But it's just it is a
Well, if you were elected, say you're going to be elected in 2 years, what would be your key policies that you intend to propose or implement?
well, I mean, well, one thing would be kind of a vision I have, which I didn't really think of until recently, is kind of turning in, like, I think, like, maybe winning the culture war, like during doing this in terms of the culture war. Something I've kind of noticed is Nashville has kind of become a hub for like conservative media and other media recently. Like, there's like the Daily Wire's here. Like, there's a lot of so maybe turning it into like turning Nashville at least, and trying to really reinvigorate the economy in this state, like turning into like kind of maybe like a conservative Hollywood, like a Hollywood, but like not a maybe
But
something like that, like getting businesses to come here. Like, it would be, building relationships in terms of that, and just that would be, and of course getting rid of the DEI, getting rid of the problem, the ESG stuff, like offering maybe, like, at least right now, a safe haven for companies to come and say, like, hey, we can offer tax incentives, things like that. Like, just to stop doing that stuff, because I think there is an element of this where people don't want to do this stuff, because it is kind of like there is, like, I know Robbie Starbuck and certain people online are kind of pressuring these companies, but which is good. But I think we need to do something at like a state level or like a government level for sure, because um, eventually what will happen is I think some of these companies will just, like, pressure only works so much. I think, like, I think there has to be like legally
no, it
binding
has to
things.
be an invitation, an offer, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then also, yeah, there has to be, like, I mean, in terms of certain things, we have to have standards, I think, and that's the thing about the left right now. I think is what's kind of nuts is they don't really seem to have any standards in any capacity, and so that's the thing, because they get mad at the right and stuff like that, like, for a lot of things. But it's like, okay, well, at least we have standards. Like, where are your standards on anything? Everything seems to be pretty inconsistent and changes
yeah,
consistently.
yeah.
So it's kind of yeah, insane in that regard. But like, it's but yeah, let me see here, because there was something
So
else.
you'd get rid of DEI and ESG. That sounds like a good start.
Mm,
And the other thing about universities is we've come so they'll hire someone at the university,
mm.
and then once they've hired him, they hire their wife as well. A spousal hire. We probably have to get rid of those spousal hires.
I mean, like, the nepotism stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. And you said that happens at like the universities.
Oh yeah. That's
Right. Okay.
happening in Canada. That it is. I don't know if it happens down there, but it's happening up here.
Yeah, I'm not as sure on that, to be honest with you. I think, yeah, we could definitely look at that stuff for sure. I mean, yeah, that would definitely be something to look at for sure. Yeah, I don't know what my biggest concerns are outside of just I mean, the education is definitely just a big thing in terms of my biggest concern, that I think we have to start like now, or there's going to be huge problems. Like, because, but
Well, I
yeah, and I'll have
think,
to surround myself with people for sure.
a Christian idea is that you have a vision, like you are formulating a vision, and then you take the next right step.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard to figure out what that is.
Sometimes it's hard to figure out what that is, and sometimes it's not what you want to do. Most of the time, it's not what you want to do, but it is what you see in front of you as necessary,
Yeah,
and that's what it's going to take. Actually, is people seeing what the next right thing is, and no matter what it is, to do the next right thing.
yeah, and because to me, like, this whole thing's kind of weird to me, because, like, it's the one job I said I'd never do 10 years ago, is get into politics, because nobody
Yeah.
really ever wakes up one day and says, "I want to be a politician, Mom." It's
Well,
like,
I think a lot of us said that because I said that when I was young too. I didn't even vote for the first while when I was a young adult.
yeah, it's
I became cynical early on by just because I had a high school job that I didn't think was dealt with properly by the people who were in charge, and so that put some cynicism in my outlook. And I think a lot of people have dropped that civic duty. And it was halfway through the last book tour that we started talking about civic duty, the necessity for civic duty. We realized that that's what was missing. That was part of what was missing anyway. And so what you're
yeah,
doing running for governor, that's civic duty.
yeah.
Is that where you got that idea from? Did you get that idea from Jordan?
Not particularly, no, but
Oh,
I
okay.
well, because what's funny is turnover reason, like I didn't actually like read his 12 rules for life because I did read a little bit of it, but the funny thing is like his writing is like exactly like mine. It's very colloquial. Like he writes kind of like how he talks, and I'm just like this. Like I don't know why, but I get annoyed with myself a lot. And so I was like, I don't know if I can read this. Like I read like a chapter or two for sure, but I'll be honest about it. I probably should read it, get back into it and read it. But mostly a lot of my stuff comes from his lectures and mostly like the interviews he does, just trying to see the dynamic of where like it was like he was going through like a media struggle session, which was really odd. Like it was with all these people interviewing and things like that. They were just like the most normal psychological opinion 20 years ago is now seen as like hate speech and like all this craziness. And I'm like, I just after seeing all those interviews, I was like, man, I don't know if I can be in this profession because this is just and with the
Yeah.
children, like I'm not gonna trans a child like
Yeah.
because there's so much there's so much that we can talk forever about that. Like just in
That's
terms of
evil. Yes.
the stuff they do to those children, it's insane, and just how it's still happening now, where they like emotionally blackmail the child and say like, well, you can have a dead kid or a trans kid to a
Yeah.
parent who wants to do right by their child, and it's but at least Tennessee in that way, like I think there are some good things that we're doing in the state. Like I think that, but we can do more. I think is what probably my response would be to a
So
lot of
what
the
are the
GOP.
good things that you're doing in Tennessee?
So a lot of things, I guess, they're doing right now. I mean, because I'm not a part of it just yet, but
Mm-hmm.
they they have I think the one of the reps I talked to, actually William Lambert, he actually put forth a bill to kind of stop the transgender surgery stuff and the trans or the giving of either that it was either that or the giving hormones out to minors. He put a bill forth from that. There was other they've put other bills like there are small subtle things you notice when you start paying attention to politics. Like one was during the BLM riots, like they like put forth a bill and passed it within a week that was like if you like destroy property and stuff, you're going to get 20 years, and that stopped that stuff overnight. Once there are consequences, it's like suddenly
Mm.
most of that stuff goes away. So
Amazing how that happens. Amazing
yeah,
how that
really,
works.
yeah.
Right.
So but it's one of those weird things, and over the last few months, like something that kind of like, and I guess where James Lindsay comes into all of this is like where because they're probably my two biggest influences, like and you as well, and just your whole family, like really just like kind of because I it's just crazy how this stuff's happened. It's just
Mm-hmm.
but he conceptualized Marxism as an anti-Christian like theology or a Gnostic cult religion, I guess is the other word he used for it as well,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and that made a lot of sense to me. And after that, it was like I heard that voice kind of come back to me in that way, like what I think is the Holy Spirit, and it just said now. Like when I was thinking about running for office, I was
Okay.
conceptualizing doing that, and I was like, okay, so this is it was a very weird like clear voice that it's like if I ignore this, I'm going to be in trouble kind of thing. Like I shouldn't ignore this. So I'm gonna walk through any open doors that come my way and see where it leads me. I mean, it's a
That's right.
for sure,
Yes.
and so
That's the necessity to do the next right thing as the doors open. Yeah.
yeah, and so that's what I'm gonna do. So, but yeah, it's I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I mean, economically speaking, I know we need to like really get manufacturing away from China. I would say and bring it back here. Will be
So
one of my
changes
big
in industry. Yeah.
Yeah, and just I don't
Yes,
know.
I agree with that. That's what has to happen. I don't know how easy that'll be because we we let all of our manufacturing establishments decay. So that would be quite a infrastructure. That would be quite an infrastructure. That would cost a lot of money to
Yeah, and
set
so
that
yeah,
all up, but it has to happen. I think.
yeah. There's just a lot of things that I would think about, like what to do on a state level, and just try to think about like what can we do in this state and start there, and just go from there. I'm trying to think of
What are the people doing in Tennessee? What's the industry like in Tennessee right now?
like economically speaking.
Yeah,
So that's the thing. I might have to look up some stuff on that. To be honest with you, I know
right. So
that
it's
like
not obvious, right?
yeah, like I mean,
Agriculture,
agriculture's big here. Outside of Nashville and the big cities, there's a lot of farms. Up in Kentucky, my grandparents used to own a cattle farm, so it's definitely that's definitely a big industry part over here. I would say empowering farmers is definitely good because I think I looked up something a little while ago where basically like in America, I don't remember the statistic quite too well, but it's like only a few companies like are in charge of the agriculture in this country, and like so basically if something
right?
happened to them or they were nationalized or something like that with the government, we could be in big trouble. And so we just have to like really fight back on this communist takeover thing because like I mean I don't know if you looked and see what Kamala some of the stuff she was suggesting like price controls on grocery stores and all these ridiculous things that are incredibly communist like and yeah that stuff cannot happen and I'm not an economist by any means. I mean I'm a former therapist, so it's not necessarily my strength, but I would say there is one thing I just forgot about this is that one thing that I think because this is the thing I've been noticing too about conservatives is like they kind of got to get better at like I think defending some of their arguments and like maybe not having like as much of the own the libs mentality that I
Hmm.
kind of see like that's not really my way. I'm not really like an own the libs kind of guy. Um, but there needs to be more of an inviting nature, like especially to women and stuff like that. We got to get them back, and I think that like we got to find ways to do that for sure. Like it's but there was a oh man I had it in my head and now I lost it, but it was there was a man I really wish I could remember because it was important.
I think this. I think that the antibiotics might be getting in your way because you're
Maybe a
taking
little bit, yeah.
because you're getting yeah. Well, they can. I mean, there's tough drugs. Those ones.
Yeah, I've been taking them for 7 days, and I got 7 more to go.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah
Yeah, because
yeah yeah.
it's bronchitis. I was really like wheezy the other day.
Have you looked into Jordan's carnivore diet?
No, but I have heard about it. I know he was in front of a Senate hearing or something recently, or some sort of
Oh
congressional
yeah,
hearing.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
where
he
he did that. Yeah, I
actually
watched a little bit of it for
he
sure.
actually said some were like very cut and dried things about the carnivore diet. But I know that when my son he had an infection when he was a little kid on his face somewhere, and I got him antibiotics and didn't really clear up. And I went to a Chinese doctor, and she said cut out all sugar of every type and just give him chicken soup. That's what she wanted me to give him, chicken
Mm.
soup. And he got better. And he got better. So sugar, and that's what we are talking about at this Senate hearing. Sugar is really wreaking havoc with our society. And you can find iodized salt now. And if you look at the ingredients, there's sugar is there in
That
salt.
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, there's just sugar everywhere. But I
Mm.
think if you cut down on your sugar, you're more likely to fight this off.
Yeah, that's
So
why
that's my
I need to do
advice.
that for
As a
sure. Yeah.
mother, that's my advice.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know my mom will probably be reiterating that when after she sees this interview, she'll be like, "Yeah, see, I told you."
That's right.
Yeah, you guys are very similar in a lot of ways. My mom and you, but let me think here because I want to see if I can remember that point I was going to make about like having better messaging. Oh yeah, with like so one thing I want to do is like put like, and I know JD Vance has hinted at this, but I want to put like an arm, figure out without doing this stuff, raising taxes or anything, or work around this, but putting it like with the Second Amendment, I know that's a big thing right now with certain people. Like, I definitely respect the Second Amendment. I don't personally carry a gun because of my faith. Like, that's where I'm at on things. But I respect everybody's right to do it. And for me, like, one thing that I talked to a few mothers about, like, and stuff so far, like friends of mine and stuff like that, and asked them is like having an armed guard like in every school would be like a good policy thing. Like,
Mm.
because the best conservative argument, I think, because see, there are arguments that like conservatives make all the time that I don't think are not the best arguments, if that makes sense. Like, so like with the gun thing, right? So the big reason we have it, I think the biggest argument, and it's hard to defend, is the defense against tyranny. I think argument for. I think it's like the only argument because the other side, like especially when they say like, well, if we got rid of guns, like violent gun crimes would go down, and I'm like, well, that's true. I mean, obviously, if you got rid of guns, there would be less. To a certain extent, we don't know the exact numbers, but to me, the thing is, it's hard to explain to people a future they can't envision where the state has totalitarian control, and then they tell you to do something, or they nationalize something, and you disagree with it, and they're like, well, we have the guns, and you can't do anything about it. Because there seems to be like a disconnect when I see like
Hmm.
college students and stuff with that argument. There seems to be a disconnect, not understanding that like the government is not to be trusted in a lot of ways. Like they could definitely, whether it's the right or the left wing, and that's the thing. Well, I wasn't going to talk about this, but we can talk about this too. Is that there seems to be a rise from the right wing, like alt right or whatever you would call it recently. Like James Lindsay's been talking about it this week and kind of getting into like arguments about this, and I agree with him on this completely as well. Is that there are Christian nationalists now that are kind of rising up, and they are not. They're like a more authoritarian right wing. They kind of, at least from my understanding, they seem to reject God's sovereignty and take it into their own hands
Hmm.
with some
Hmm.
of the stuff they say, and that concerns me as well. Rising from the right, um,
Yeah, well, I think that the longer we put up with the leftist narrative, the more the alt right will rise up in defense.
right? And I'm
And
seeing it, and it worries me a little bit because they
yeah,
are
sure, it should. Hmm.
because I think Christians are going to have to get used to being made fun of a little bit until we set some standards. Because with the Christian nationalist thing, it worries me because what will happen is like because I was actually commenting on one of James's things yesterday. I think he seemed to agree with it, but it was where what will happen is that if it's like it's an affordance trap is what it is. So they'll afford you a certain amount of leeway in terms of allowing Christian nationalism to rise. Then what they do is they use that as justification to crush all Christians. They lump you all into the same category.
Mm.
They don't really care if you're reasonable or not. Just like with Jordan, with his view, it's like he's just a dissident. And it's like he could have the most reasonable view, and it's like he's going to get lumped in with the Christians whether he likes it or not eventually. And that's what will happen with the Christian nationalist thing. Is a lot of us Christians are going to get lumped in with that, and probably won't be a good thing that what happens if we don't kind of fight that back too. But that to a lesser extent. But it's just a danger we have to, I guess, kind of be aware of for sure.
Well,
But
but luckily we have Elon Musk in charge of X, and
yeah, absolutely.
also he's in support of Trump in his campaign.
Right,
Both,
for sure.
but
And oh yeah, go ahead.
no, well, both those things are very helpful. So
Yeah, for sure. And I like Trump in a lot of ways, but there are some questions I have about him in terms of I think good people are whispering in his ear, which is great. But there are two things. One, I think that I am a little concerned about how much he is overtly aware of the communist threat. Because he was on Lex Friedman's podcast and he said he called Kamala a communist, but he was like, I just kind of call her that because they call me something else. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, like, my parents love Trump and stuff like that. I'm more kind of like 50-50 on him. Like, I like kind of how he speaks his mind and stuff like that. I think it's kind of funny, but it's also, there's also some things there where like, I'm really curious to know if he understands certain things, like the threat of certain things. And I'm like, we really
well,
have to
he is,
kind of,
and he's what? How old is he? 78 years old. So
yeah, he's pretty up there for sure.
yeah, he is. And so, in terms of understanding that communism has come to the country, well, he has people around him to inform him, and that's what he needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is that's a great thing too, because like what I would say to anybody, if I don't know who, I don't know what your audience is particularly made up of. I don't know if it's in terms of types of people, but I would say to anybody out there, like if you're thinking about not voting for Trump, I would say like the defiance he represents right now is more important than the person he is at this moment. Because I know a lot of people tend to vote on moral lines or likability and things like that.
Hmm.
And my response would be, yeah, just like he also like you can look at. I think even Elon said this at one point. He's better at surrounding himself with competent people as opposed to, I would say, Biden and the Harris administration, where they're surrounded by Marxists, like overt Marxists that
Yeah.
will be proud to tell you that they are, and like Tim Walz, who literally said that we should punish misinformation as hate speech. Like he said that in the debate, and I was like, this is absolutely insane. That's where we're at. So,
Yeah, that's where we're at. And the
so
election is coming.
yes, it is, and so we will see what happens. I mean, it's not going to change what I have to do, but we hope and pray, and then I think either way, I think this is going to be a situation where like it's going to take more than 4 years, regardless if Trump gets elected or not. I think to fix this because it's
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No,
for
this is the
sure.
long fight, don't you
Yeah,
think?
and
Yeah.
yeah, and in America, it's kind of weird. It's like people kind of see this like as like a very team sport kind of thing, like my team versus your team, and we all scream if like our team doesn't win, and it's like I'm just kind of like I don't really conceptualize that way. Maybe I'm more of an outsider than I should be in terms of this stuff. Like I guess I have a very different way of looking at certain things. I don't know if that'll help me or hurt me in this process, but
Oh, I think it is an individual responsibility. That's where the responsibility lies, is with each person. And
yeah.
so the
And
whole
what
idea of camps, like this camp and that camp, that takes away personal responsibility.
right. And well, what irritates me too about I guess or what confuses me about certain things is people thinking along party lines instead of ideological lines. Like I guess in terms of like for me, like I'd rather come to something like individually instead of like just agreeing with it for the party's sake. And that's where like that's another thing about politics that definitely like confuses me, I guess, in a lot of ways. And I'm like, I'd rather like I mean, I can agree with somebody in the party about certain things, but it just there seems to be like this I don't know what you call it, like you got to toe the line and think this way about this particular issue, or else you kind of get thrown to the side. I don't know. It's kind of odd.
Like
Like it's just a
group think, maybe? Is it a
yeah,
type of
maybe
group
group
think?
maybe groupthink or just like yeah or something like that. Like yeah, it's just an odd thing to me. I guess someone will have to. I mean, most of my views do align with the conservative party, but there are certain things like even with conservatives that I would probably like with my faith and stuff like live out a little differently, like on a personal level at least. I don't know about a government level, but like helping the poor, for example, like in scripture. But a lot of at least Republicans back in the day seem to have a lot of contempt for the poor in some ways. So
Well,
like to me it's
things have
just kind of a
changed.
reality. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I don't know what a lot of them believe now. So it's like I mean I think it's definitely changing. I mean like Elon posted that meme a while ago where the left left him, and now there's a lot of people now that even me like I would you know wouldn't consider myself right wing at the time. It was more just like a religious like slightly left leaning maybe like on certain social issues was probably where I was at,
Hmm.
but now I'm like now I'm running for the Republican Party.
No,
So
no, you're squarely on the right.
yeah, it pretty much like I took some political compass testing. I'm like libertarian, right? I guess I don't know what that means, but
Yes, yes, yeah, I think that's probably true, given
yeah,
uh, given your psychology background. And
yeah, it definitely opens me up to more less black and white thinking. I would say like because with therapists like, and this is why I think Jordan too like it has a broad appeal is because we can see the gray in things. Like we can understand that certain situations are nuanced and life is not just as categorical as I guess. Like and I like other conservatives like Matt Walsh and like Ben Shapiro and stuff like that, but they tend to have very like I would say like very black and white thinking sometimes, and just with people when you have and you can think that way, but then when you and I know and I'm sure Jordan has this, but once you have somebody in your room as a therapist and they're crying and their life's falling apart in front of them and they're looking to you for answers or for you to guide them, like psychologically lead them to a place, it gets real. And then you have to think about, maybe I don't have it all figured out.
right, Right, and
So,
be more aware that we don't have it figured out. None of us do.
oh yeah, and
We have to take our guidance from what we see around us, presenting to us, and make our opinions based on that, and inform ourselves, right? Inform ourselves into what the facts are.
oh, sorry.
What the facts are. We have to be aware of what the
Yeah,
facts are. Yes. No,
yeah,
it's a
exactly.
strange time. It's a strange time. And with the election coming, I imagine it's getting more tense.
Yeah, for sure. I just hope there isn't any violence or anything this time. Is what I hope either way. I think is that's the big thing I'm hoping for, and just
Yeah, me
reorganizing.
too.
Whoever loses reorganizes and just tries to do what's best for the country. I think, and just doing what's best for
Our children.
yeah, for sure. And like,
Hmm.
and to me, yeah, one of the things I was going to ask your opinion on this too. What do you think about like because this has been a big thing in the GOP recently, and I like the idea, but it also kind of terrifies me a little bit. What do you think about like because Vivek and DeSantis both have talked about this is like getting rid of the bureaucracy and getting rid of like 75% or more of the like I guess they would call it the bloat or whatever. Like I like the idea to some extent, but I wanted to hear what you think about it first.
Oh, I
And
think that's a great idea. I'm very good at throwing things out. So I would be I would be willing to believe that it should start with throwing people out.
okay, yeah, no, my mom and you are very similar. She's the same way. She likes to throw stuff out. She's very like kind of the rock of the family. Like I get those vibes from you for sure. Like it's like oh
Well,
wait, I
it's
bet I can.
you can't see clearly if you don't throw things out, right?
Ha, yeah, have you ever taken the Myers Briggs? I bet I can guess it.
Oh
You taken
yeah,
the
I
Myers-Briggs?
did. Well, they
Uh,
gave it to me when I was married.
okay, do you remember it? I bet I can guess. Let me see if I can get it.
Uh, what are they? Let's see. You have to tell me what all the parameters are. I can't remember.
So, so introvert, extrovert,
Oh
sensing
yeah.
and intuitive,
Hmm.
thinking and feeling, and judging and perceiving. So,
So do I remember? Well, I'm I'm not an introvert, but I'm not a extreme extrovert either. So I'm kind of middle of the road there. Thinking and feeling, more feeling,
okay.
more feeling. What are the other ones?
Judging and perceiving, more about are you more
Oh yeah,
organized? And
judging and perceiving.
curious.
Might have been judging, probably.
Yeah, more
Probably.
organized. Yeah,
More
seems organized.
judgy, probably. And that's the last one?
Sensing or intuitive, that's like a more like day to day, or you
Yeah,
more
more
like
intuitive. Definitely
more
more intuitive. More intuitive.
future thinking. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, that would be me.
Yeah. So, anyway, I got sidetracked there, but what were we talking about? Oh yeah, so like the nanny state thing. Yeah, the nanny state thing. Like, and this is why I'm glad like Jordan's really interviewing a lot of people because it gives me a perspective on what they think. Like, especially long form discussions like this. Like, I
Hmm.
really enjoy this kind of talk because it's like it gets me to really think about stuff, and then maybe some things I haven't thought about I can kind of get to later. Like, but with like I watched like Vivek and DeSantis both, and what was surprising to me is they still had different methods of like within that tearing down the bureaucracy thing. Like from my understanding, like Vivek just from my understanding just kind of wants to take like a sledgehammer to everything and just kind of start gutting departments. But DeSantis and the work he's doing in his state, which is why I guess I'm more ideologically aligned with him right now, is he wants to get rid of, and he's doing it in his state. He's more fine. It's more of a fine tuning. It's more of a getting rid of the bloat, but keeping the positions that actually matter in his state. So like, because for me, like I have to think about it like psychologically. Like so, like yes, we want to get rid of things, but we don't, I don't want to like swing it wildly and get rid of something that's like super important. So like,
Hmm.
so for me, like even in Tennessee, like I would want to do that as well. Like, and that's kind of the idea too, is get rid of the bloat. But but to me, there is a thought process that I would, an analytical aspect of this for me, which is like if it was created in the first place, like there had to be whether it was effective or not, there had to be a reason they created it, right? Or maybe at the time there was like a need or like a like there was something that they saw that needed to change. And so I'd want to find out what that was, look at, is it serving its purpose now? How much can you remove? And then go from there if that makes sense at all. Like, and so
Yeah, well, I think it's better to, you
get the
can't
bigger
throw the
picture.
baby out with the bathwater, as they say. So
Mhm.
you have to take a look at what exactly is happening, what the people are up to, how long that's been going on, what the outcomes have been. Yeah. There's some analysis that has to happen.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of reminds me. I read like Thomas Sowell's book and things like that, like Basic Economics and things like that, and that's where I'm kind of getting some of my economic stuff from. At least right now, that's the book I've been reading because I was reading like about boring antitrust laws yesterday and how a lot of antitrust laws don't actually serve the purpose that they intend to in terms of like increasing competition. Like, so I think he gave like an example where it's like if you try to like I'm trying to think about what it was. It was about I think it had to do with corn or something like that, like putting a price cap on corn or something like that. Like in a certain industry, it's like, well, corn has multiple uses. It can be used as fuel. It can be used as other things, and putting a price cap on it's a really bad idea because it's got different uses, and then there's like all these other aspects of it that were just kind of over my head a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I've got to really think about this in terms of
So you
economics,
think
in terms of
if they put a price cap on it, then it limits the the way that the commodity can be used. Yes.
yeah, it can for sure,
Oh,
absolutely,
I see. Yeah,
and
that's
so there
probably
was
not good.
yeah, there was that, and then obviously like with Kamala's price caps on grocery stores, it's really bad because they assume these corporations are greedy, but see, like I think was it Kroger's only had like the grocery store had like a 2% profit margin, and so it's like if they're gouging people, they're really bad at it. It's like they raise the prices because of inflation. It's like this is basic economics, and I mean I have like a probably like a high school level understanding of economics, and I understand this. Like, and we have someone running for president who wants to price cap this stuff. It's terrifying. Like it's insane to me, but like it is a like we've got to stop. And that's the other thing too. Like I know Tim Burch is one of the reps I need to talk to. He needs to call me back, but you know he here in the state, but he is big on talking about like how we don't need to spend like the money we don't have right now and stop. And that's the thing about Trump that with Republicans or Democrats that I really worry about right now is that I don't think the spending is going to stop, and that's the big thing that's going to like we're kicking the can down the road, and eventually what's going to happen is something catastrophic will happen if we keep printing money and spending it in places we shouldn't.
Right.
Like and Milton Friedman talks about this like in one of his videos that like in order to get deflation we have to like stop spending, but I don't think we can, and so we're gonna have to figure out what to do with that. And I need a lot of smart people around me for that one because I don't have the answer I need on that yet.
No. No, but it is about the people you have around you.
Yeah, it's I need a lot of help. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I
But that's the
yeah,
first that's the first thing, though, recognizing that you need help. And you've
yeah.
recognized that.
Well, yeah, I need a lot more than probably other people think, but like, yeah, yeah, I really appreciate you. Like, I was shocked that you were going to interview me today. I didn't, at first I thought that God opens doors. He really does. Like, I didn't know that. I really didn't think this would happen. I was messaging different people to see what could happen and maybe like, and just tell my story. But yeah, but yeah, I really hope with Jordan, like he knows he's not alone when he goes and does that re-education. So is he actually going to like,
We'll
is
see.
he
We'll
going to do that?
see. We'll see. Not sure they can find anybody to educate him. So
Okay, yeah, because
we'll see.
but yeah, be defined as possible in that stuff. It's re-education is an incredibly communist concept.
Yeah.
It's literally punishing wrongthink. I mean, and
Yeah.
there are social media sites too that I don't want to talk about what I'm doing because they tend to be certain social media sites tend to be like there's this hidden war going on between social media sites right now with X and like Reddit.com
Mm.
where like the redditors will come to x.com and abuse the because I know it's happening. I am like 90% sure. I told my local rep about this, but I'm 90% sure the DNC has like direct control over Reddit.com.
Oh.
Like in terms of how that website works, it basically works as a like it's something my generation uses a lot of. It's like a forum
Mm-hmm.
website,
Mm-hmm.
and that entire website is essentially like like a communist platform at this point. Like it
Oh
has been
dear.
politically it has been politically co-opted in a large way. So
Mm.
you have moderators who can essentially control these subreddits, like these forums. And at any time, these forums can be co-opted for a political purpose. Like so, if you go on Reddit right now and look at all of the uh, forums and stuff like that, like if you scroll by the top post of all time, usually it's something political within the first 10 posts.
I see. I
And
see. Mm.
and the
I
moderators
did
can
hear
also
it was changing, but I didn't realize it changed that much.
oh yeah, and so like and so for example too, like Elon Musk was like that's how I first found out about it. Elon was Reddit about 10 years ago, and they were super positive, and now it's like it's the exact opposite. It's like Elon's like a Nazi and like all these ridiculous things, and so the shift has happened that much. Also, how they so and so the moderators, they also can ban things they don't like the
Yeah.
rules are inconsistent as well. And here's how they get away with it
Well,
is
they'd like
technically
that, wouldn't they? They'd like
oh
that
yeah,
if they could ban people.
and they do get away with it legally because technically the moderators are not classified as employees, so they can't be sued on that on that level. So it's a very crafty game they play, and they're good at it because they're really able to propagandize people in that way. Like even the local
Mm.
subreddits, like if you look at Reddit Nashville or Reddit, like it's all leftists.
Oh dear.
Like on every, it's really concerning. It's basically, in my opinion, like a propaganda outlet at this point, and we have to like
Mm.
go after it. I already told William Lambert that I don't know if he's out there, but we're going to tackle it together if I get elected because like we have got to make it fair across every social media site and have a standard there because this is kind of like X is kind of like the Alamo right now. We're kind of like up against
Mm-hmm.
like everybody else in terms of this being the last site
Yeah.
where there's at least some modicum of control, like of freedom. Even though what I think will happen, and this is what I worry about, is if Kamala wins and they put the pressure up on Elon, it's either this or his company goes under, then we might unfortunately have some restrictions on this website before it gets better, and
Yeah,
that's what I
well,
worry
we'll
about.
see. We'll see. He's a pretty powerful person, so we'll see what
Oh yeah,
happens.
absolutely. But and it's not a slight against him or anything. It's just that
No, no, I know.
I understand the conundrum he's going to be in if they come after him. So, but hopefully, if I get elected, we'll start to fight back. So
Mm-hmm.
I need a lot of prayers though. So it's like God's gonna have to move some mountains for this to happen. So
Yes, yes, let's all
I have
pray.
faith. I have faith that He will for sure.
Yeah.
So
Well, the more we talk about it, right? The more we talk about the more people will pay attention.
yeah, hopefully, yeah, for sure.
Well, that's the hope.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping all the way. So
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad. Well, thank you very much for coming on my podcast.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it was good to meet you and good luck with your fight.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, put in a good word for Jordan for me. I'd love to talk to him at some point. Like I know he's super busy, but
Well, we're going to be going on a book tour. Maybe we'll see you on our way around the country.
oh yeah,
We're
maybe
going
one
to
of these days.
be
Yeah, I
traveling.
saw him. Man.
New
Oh, go
book,
ahead.
right? New book.
Yeah.
And mid-November till the beginning of April. So,
Okay, yeah. I saw him in Nashville at one point when he came, I think, for his first book tour. So that was really fun. I think it was him and Dave Rubin, I think.
well, we're
So
probably
that
going
was
back to Nashville. We haven't got our routing yet, so I don't know exactly where we'll be
okay.
when. But once we do,
Oh
maybe
yeah,
we
I'll just swing
can.
by.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. That'd be good.
that sounds great.
Okay. Take care.
All right, thank you.